It's just a sort of minute. Okay. Before I call the, well, first of all, good evening, everyone. Before I call the Town of Delafield annual meeting of electors to order, there will be a presentation of the 2020 Delafield Fire Department Member of the Year Award by Chief Hoppy. Yeah. You guys are up. Yeah, I don't think they knew that, so I thought I'd point that out. Okay.
Give them 30 seconds to occupy the room. I want to thank the board for giving us this time to publicly acknowledge the 2020 Fire Department Member of the Year Award. In December, we did a Zoom presentation at the fire department, and it wasn't very personal. We like to acknowledge the individuals that do the good work over the year, and we just couldn't share that publicly. So a few members attended. We handed off a plaque with a nice town check for a couple bucks for the person. But we thought it prudent to come back to the annual meeting where every other year we had the opportunity to do this. So I'll just take a few minutes. I wanted to say that the membership submits applications or nomination forms, and this year we got a lot. And so I wanted to make some honorable mentions for Jim Westover. We got a couple of nominations. He's since resigned from the department as we merged. We have a Jack Swizzler that did the same thing. A couple nominations for him because he did a lot of work in the past few years. And then Autumn Stiegel, who is still here. She's a newer member and individual. She also got a couple of nominations. This year, the winner was selected is Nicole Cummings. I'd like to bring her forward so she can stand up and listen and talk about herself for a few minutes. Nicole joined the fire department in 2006. She has 14 years of service with us now in both the roles of a firefighter and an EMT intermediate. The intermediate role is one step below paramedic, requires a lot of hours of education and continuing education. She's stellar in her field with the fact that she has some experience in the hospital setting, working with pediatric patients, starting IVs, cardiac patients. She brings a lot to that EMS team. And for that, she's been viewed as an informal leader. A lot of the newer EMTs will shadow her, go to her, watch her, have her help them on the calls. So it's just a consistent mentor that we've needed in the EMS setting for quite some time. So we appreciate that, Nicole, for all that, the work that you have done. Thank you. Again, I mentioned before, we don't have a plaque to present to her, but we are going to make sure that her name ends up on the last spot that's on the plaque at the back of the room. One day maybe we can take those upstairs and share them with all the fire department individuals. I'll let her say a few words, and maybe if she brought family, she could introduce them to the group, if anyone's with you today.
Yeah.
Okay, it's yours. Thank you and congratulations.
So I do have family here. I have my daughter Emma, who's on the fire department with me as well, my husband Tommy, and my daughter Izzy, who came home from Carthage this evening to be here. I'm truly honored as far as being the last member of Town of Delafield to receive Member of the Year. I actually started my career October 3rd, 1995. So if you were to tell me 26 years ago, I'd still be able to do this and love it as much as I do. It's truly an honor. I started out thinking I'm just going to do EMS, and then had the support of my parents to do fire as well. And it's truly been a blessing. One of my favorite things is working with the younger people, helping them, teaching them, guiding them. At the time I started, there weren't very many females doing the firefighting, so I'd like to hope that I paved the way for some that are doing it now. When I had my first structure fire, I actually was about 3 miles away when I started off on North Prairie from where it was. And my mom, she was so supportive, she never hesitated. But come to find out about 10 years later, she actually went to where the fire was to make sure that I was okay. And she said, I was looking all over the fire ground for you. Very unique that my structure fire was a fully engulfed structure. It was actually Century Springs and in the village of North Prairie. And she said, I was kind of panicking, like, where are you? And then I look on the fire ground, like, is that a kid out there? No, it's my daughter, sure enough. And she did not tell me that story, knowing what a pistol I was for about 10 years. And she said, I just needed to know you're okay. And for me, it was just kind of that aha moment, like what we do means something. It's very special to our families. And our families sacrifice a lot. So I would just like to say thank you to my family for all the hours away and your support. It just gets in our blood and is a passion. And without the support of our family, it wouldn't be possible. And thank you to all the members for your support. It's just a very gracious thing to be nominated by your peers. And they truly are my family. Like I've told them before, I didn't have brothers growing up, so I've gained a lot over the years, and there's nothing better than them having your back. So thank you very much.
Thank you again for the time. We do appreciate it. Just as a closing side note, Nicole, with her teaching abilities and her interest in that, now with the new merger with Lake Country, there's a training center in Neshota, and she spends time up there helping with the classes, instructing the next generation. So thank you again. Have a good night.
Thanks, Chief Huffey. Okay, with that being, and thank you for all of your service. We really appreciate it, and we're very proud of having the fire department as part of the town for all these years, and we're looking forward to a good relationship with Lake Country Fire and Rescue. So, okay, thank you. And now I'll call to order the Town of Delafield annual meeting of electors. We all rise and join me in the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mr. Green, a roll call, please.
Present. Present.
Present. Yeah, he's on his way. He should be here shortly, but we'll continue the meeting. So we do have a quorum. Yeah. And now I'll go to the introduction and swearing in of the town board elected officials. We have a new elected official, Joe Wolfley, who is beginning his first term as a town supervisor. And we have Edward Kranick, re-elected as town supervisor. And we have Chairman Ron Troy, re-elected. And now the administrator will,
You want to stand up at the podium?
whatever you'd like.
One at a time?
All three of us at one time?
Yeah, you can, that works.
You want-
Makes my job easier. Keeps moving. I'll give you reading materials. Anything. I don't have this memorized yet either, so. Repeat after me, raise your right hand. I state your name.
Aye,
Joe
Ron
Wolfley.
Troy.
Having been elected as, go ahead and read.
Having been elected as a supervisor of the town board of Delafield, swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin, and will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability. So help me God.
Very good, and then go ahead and sign. And then I have another copy for you guys, so that you guys can have your own original.
Welcome.
You can hand it to me later, I'll sign.
Go ahead.
Sure. Stick it at the end of the table, please. Thank you.
All the way down. Okay, with that done, we'll move to the approval of the April 21st, 2020 annual meeting minutes.
You want to make this clear that this is open?
Yeah, it's the floor. We're waiting.
I move it be accepted as submitted.
Okay, I have a motion. I have a motion from Dick and a second from Karen to accept the minutes as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. There is no old business. Are there any citizen comments? Not seeing any citizen comments, we'll move to the presentation and approval of the 2020 annual audit report by our auditor, Howard. And we understand Howard has a scheduling conflict, so we're going to
Right.
move it along.
That I will stick around as long as I'm needed. And I will, just want to say something, seeing that presentation about 3 weeks ago. I got a call 8:30 in the morning from my son, who lives in Summit Lakes. And he said his apartment complex was on fire. And it's a huge complex, if you've been down there in Heartland. And he lives by himself, but he's got his cat. So he said, Dad, could you go there and make sure that my cat's okay? So I go down there, and I don't know how many departments were there, over 10? But I started seeing several of our clients there, and I know afterwards I had called Sandy, and I said, just make sure you get this message to Matt how much, we've got a business relationship, never had it personal before, and never appreciated, because it hit home. I mean, that thing was blazing when you got there, and they had to contain very, very quickly. But just a personal note, how much that was appreciated. I'm going to digress just a little bit, do things a little bit different. Do this.
Thanks, Howard.
Just hope that, a picture is worth 1,000 words, so hopefully this will answer some questions. But even before I do that, so the board has been given our audited statement and our audit report and the financial statements, and every single page is stamped draft, which is a first. So we hired another firm out of La Crosse to review my audit work papers this year. And he said he would gladly do it. If he hadn't agreed to that, I would have retired last fall, which, good, bad, or indifferent, I don't know which it is. But so I called Bill 3 weeks ago and said, so where do things stand? And he has had the town's work papers for a while, but he had been working 95 hours a week, he said, for over a month. And so I didn't push and said, I thought, I'm gonna go to Ron and say, is it okay if I just stamp draft on these and we'll finalize them as soon as Bill gets his comments back to me? Honestly, we can't release statements until we've had a second set of eyes go through them. That's just part of the quality control that's required for an audit. And I can't think of the last time during a review that I've had a number change that I've presented. So I have quite a bit of confidence in these. If something were to change, I would come back to the board and say, if it's significant, this is what happened. He's gotten a few jobs back to me. He sent one back. I had scanned in the whole engagement. It was like 900 pages of audit work papers. And he had 4 comments on it. And one of the footnotes changed. And all it did is it took it from this section over here and put it over here. And none of the numbers changed. And I don't expect that to be, I expect that to be the case for the town also. So I'm just putting that out there. So I'm going to start with what I just passed out. And if you had your audit in front of you, this would be kind of equivalent to page 9. It's the comparison of the budget to the actual for the general fund. And I just thought there are some idiosyncrasies with the town budget that it'd be easier if I presented with some more information on it so you can see it rather than me just talking about numbers. For those, I know we have a new board member here, but everybody else has been through the budget process. And so you can visualize these pages and pages of it, and included are separate pages for things like park donations, replacement fund. Well, technically those are part of the general fund. They're a component of it, but they're included in our report of the general fund, but they're commingled. The numbers are commingled in here. So I wanted to make sure you understand just what the numbers for each of those parts of this are. And so I grade things out, and I'm going to just, and I also added a column on the far right that is a comparison to the original budget. Right now, that's not the way audit reports are presented. They're a comparison with the amended budget, which to me is silly because you overspend, you amend your budget, and all of a sudden it looks like you are perfect. There are no variances, and I don't know what information that tells you other than your budget agrees with your actual. So I added the original budget so you can see this is what we planned and this is what happened. So the first column is the original budget, and you can see that the budgetary fund balance was $1.8 million. That includes the replacement fund, it includes the park donation fund, and it includes, obviously, the unassigned general fund balance. The bottom of the first column, the fund balance is projected after the budget was $1,459,000. So when you put the budget together, you're expecting to use $340,000 of your fund balance. That was split three ways. Park donations was supposed to use up $72,000 for the skateboard park. Replacement fund was going to use up $168,000 to put towards roads. And the general fund was not balanced either. That was a deficit budget of $99,000. And you were just going to use up surplus to fund that deficit. Third column is what actually happened. So you started with your 1.8 million. At the bottom, the fund balance as of December 31st turned out to be $1,608,000. It did go down, but only by $191,000, significantly different than the 340. It was a turnaround of about $149,000. You did use up $47,000 of park donations. You did the work to repair the skateboard park, but you also went out and got a $20,000 donation to help offset that. So you didn't use up as much as you thought you were going to. The replacement fund did use $168,000 to help pay for the road work that was done last year. But look at the undesignated general fund. It actually went up by $25,000. And I just want to stop right there for a moment because when the 2021 budget was put together, if you can visualize that in the far right column, the interior columns are estimates of how 2020 is going to turn out. There were 6 months of actuals that Dan puts in there, and there were 6 months of estimates. If you go down to that bottom number of what the projection was for 2020, it was that they would add $21,854 to the general fund. It turned out to add $25,000. That's pretty remarkable when you got 6 months worth of estimates and you're within a few $1,000s. So I just wanted to, those are some good estimates that you were coming up with. Okay, so how did you, there are some significant variances though. So I mean, it's like, okay, so not every account was dead on, especially with everything that went on with COVID and the elections and everything else. So there's significant variances over in the far right column. I'm just going to go through those real quick. The third number down is $57,000, and those are intergovernmental revenues that were over budget. If you can imagine that you got your routes to recovery, you got other election aids, that obviously none of those were budgeted for. $121,000 under regulation compliance to the good. It just tells you that how much building took place in 2020, which is remarkable. Building permits were $110,000 more than you had budgeted. Now, that being said, the amount that you paid your building inspectors was significantly more, because one's a function of the other. But the bottom line is that the net amount added over $20,000 to the good at the bottom, okay? The charges for services, $18,000, and that's basically because you lost revenues from having the rec programs canceled. The interest, that's $34,000, and I went back and looked, and you took in $64,000 in 2019. At the end of, in December of 2019, the Waukesha State Bank account for the tax collections was earning 1%. Not much, right? But in December, you earned $2,500. At the end, in December of 2020, you were getting 0.04% on your money, and you made $93. And we're talking about having over $9 million in this account. It's ludicrous. But again, that's why I gave you the bottom line first. So you had a positive bottom line to the general fund, even having rec programs canceled, having additional expenses for COVID and this interest earnings. Miscellaneous income, $35,000. $20,000 of that is the donation for the skateboard park. So that's where that figure's in there. Go down to the general government, now we're to the expenditures, $49,000 to the good. I'll tell you that your professional fees came in $53,000 under budget between legal, engineering, and accounting. We were $11,000 under budget, and I think you can thank the gentleman who's to my right here. A year ago when I did that'd be you, Dan. Not to your right. So a year ago when I did the 2019 audit, I logged in and I was asking questions to Dan, who hadn't been here for a single day that year. And the audit was basically saved because of Karen. So the audit this year was a lot different because obviously Dan had been here all year, and so asking questions, getting answers was a breeze. It was much simpler. And like I said, the accounting services were $11,000 under budget. So, but legal and engineering were likewise. Public safety, $50,000 over budget. That's pretty much because of the building inspector's fees. $40,000 under budget for roads. And a lot of that has to do with, well, it's the road projects, but it's also salt. And I've seen this everywhere I've gone, that they didn't use any salt in November and December. So, and here's the same way. You had a salt shed that was full. It doesn't hit the expenses, not when you write the check. It hits the expenses when you actually use the salt. So the salt that was out there in the salt shed is an asset. It's under a different page on your balance sheet under supplies inventory, and that's quite a bit higher than it was the year before. And so salt budget came way in under budget. The next one, Parks and Rec, $15,000 under budget. Again, cancellation of the rec program, so you didn't have the expenses either. Capital outlays, $24,000 over budget. There was a final payment on a plow truck that was being built, and it had been budgeted for in 2019. They expected to have the truck up and running then. It didn't happen. It was still in process, and so that payment came in 2020, and there wasn't a 2020 budget for it. The transfers out, $40,000. People who were here 9 months ago may recall that the debt service budget was not correct, and the general fund ended up having to subsidize and transfer money over to make those debt payments. So all in all, though, you can see revenues were $169,000 to the good. The expenditures were just slightly over budget by $20,000 when you net all those things that I just talked about, and it made for a positive $149,000 to the bottom line. So you didn't use up nearly as much of surplus as you had anticipated. Okay? So, and I thought that would just help rather than what you're seeing in our audit report, because I don't have the park and rec, park donations separated out, and I didn't have the replacement funds, so. Okay, one other thing I'd like to touch base, and now if you have your audit report, it's on page 5. This is the balance sheet. And I'm just going to talk about, okay, where does your surplus stand now for your general fund? Page 5, Exhibit C. So I'm just talking about the bottom of the first column, general fund. The assigned funds, $339,000. The prior year, they had been $656,000. So there's a dramatic decrease in those, primarily because you used up the $168,000 from the replacement fund, and you also had that $91,000 of a deficit general fund balance from the budget from 2020. It showed it as an assigned amount because it was spoken for basically to fund 2020. This year the budget was balanced, so that wasn't in there. The replacement fund is now down to $296,000. The park donation fund is down. You're not seeing these. They're in the footnotes to the statements if you go into the guts of it. But the park donations now is $44,000, and that's being carried over to 2021. That's what's available for spending. The unassigned amount is $1.2 million, a significant increase by about $149,000. So yes, I showed you what happened to the general fund balance overall. It reshuffled the different line items on here because some of the assigned numbers were used up, and some of the, like for the skateboard park, for instance. One other thing, and I'm skipping around here, trying to have some train of thought, but page 34. The page we just left, there's a column called Other Governmental Funds, and the numbers are small. They're it's a technical, they call them non-major funds. You have to go through a calculation whether you're gonna call them out and identify them or not. Well, the non-major fund is the impact fee fund. So page 5 has what happened to that during the year. $52,000 came in impact fees. Nothing was spent. And you came into the year with 95,000 and you're leaving 2020 with 147,000. So if you're doing some planning for what to do with the parks, with the upcoming budgets, that's one place you can go for it. There were no borrowings during the year. You paid off $212,000. You paid off one borrowing with Waukesha State Bank. You have 3 borrowings remaining. One is less than $5,000. It's no interest. It's with the county. You have one that was from 2019 for $250,000 for a couple of DPW vehicles. And you have the big one, which is about $3 million for this building. So other than that, you have been very frugal. You watched your money. There was one thing I was made aware of last year is that there were CPAs who were putting in 2019 footnotes at the very end saying, COVID has hit. And we have no idea what the financial ramifications are, but they could be bad. You know, whether it's lost revenues, whether it's increased expenditures or whatever it is. And you're seeing that it really had no impact at all on here. The couple footnotes that I'd like to talk about it's on page 27. They are on page 27. Nobody here was around, but in 2004, GASB 34 hit, and it was this thick, and it rewrote how we present financial statements. And since then, GASB has been super busy, and as you can see, so that was GASB 34. Well, look at note C at the top on page 27. This is all what's coming. Some of these should have gone into effect already, but they were delayed because of COVID. The top one, lease, is going to be a real pain in the butt. There are things that we would have blown off because they wouldn't have met the old definitions of what is a lease. You would have to have like ownership, a bargain purchase for $1 at the end of it, or things like that. Well, now they're defining you got to put everything that's a lease that's over a year old on the books somehow. And it's going to be a new category called the right to use asset. And you're going to amortize it. So a postage meter, a copier. We may go, because of materiality, we're going to have to go through the computation to figure out what that is. And we may just say, forget it. It's not material. And I'll explain it to Dan. He'll initial it and say, we'll pass on booking these things. But that's just one of them. We're going to have to go through the computation. And you can see how many more there are here. Hopefully, not many of them apply, but it doesn't matter. We're going to have to go through and see if they do. Okay, subsequent events. The last note, D. Normally, we don't put anything in here. We say, I'll have Dan send me a backup of Sage. I'll read minutes since I last was here. I'll have, ask him a few questions if anything's changed from last year. And then I'll say, there were no subsequent events that affected last year. Well, that because of the merger with Lake Country Fire, that was significant enough that saying as of January 1st, that did occur this year. And a lot of things are changing because of that. Well, maybe they're not changing, but the service can be provided, but now it's a contracted service. So instead of having a budget that's a page and a half with 45 or 50 accounts, you'll have one account, which will make life, as from a bookkeeping standpoint, it'll make it a lot nicer, for sure. You won't have the payroll and what have you. But, and the assets are going to be split, or you're going to maintain your assets until such time as they're no longer useful and they replace them and then they pay for them and they become theirs. But you're going to have title still to all the vehicles, as far as I understand. So does anybody have any questions?
Any questions from the floor? Okay, then we take a motion from the floor to approve the auditor's report for 2020. I have a motion and a second from Karen. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passes. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
All right.
Thank you very much, Howard. Looking forward to starting the budget in June.
It won't be like last year, though.
Be faster.
Yeah.
Okay. We have an annual audit report approved. Item 7C, discussion and possible action to adopt Resolution 21-647, a resolution to authorize the town board to issue general obligation bonds pursuant to Section 60.10, Sub 2, Sub D of the Wisconsin statute. The resolution is in the package. Dan, you want to give us a quick overview of this? Thanks, Howard.
Yeah, so if you recall, last year we talked about with interest rates being low, that it might be, thanks. It might be a good time to consider us refinancing the debt we have on this building to save, according to Ehlers, a substantial amount of money, over $100,000 over the life of the loan. Well, in order to do that, we would need to pass a resolution that allows the town board the authority to issue general obligation refunding bonds, basically bonds that the town board normally would have to go through a referendum in order to obtain for anything that's over 10 years. And if you read Eller's email that I put on your desk, it kind of explains that process. The intent of us passing this resolution obviously would not be to obtain more bonds, for purchasing. It would be the intent to save money by refinancing the bonds that we have. But just in all transparency, it would eliminate the need for a referendum in order to issue long-term debt. Now, in order for us to do something like build a building like this, or to obtain property, according to Ehlers, that still needs to be approved at an annual meeting such as this, so the town board of electors would have to approve that purchase. I think there's a great opportunity here for the town to save money, and I think it's something that we should consider. I leave it up to the board as to what you want to do. But the interest rates have been holding low, so we still have an opportunity. We thought maybe they would go up over the next 6 to 8 months, but they've stayed low, so we still have an opportunity to save a lot of money.
So, and this avoids the need of having a referendum to borrow money, and allows us to refinance our debt. We still have to come to the electors to get permission to do any new bond issues, but we don't have to go to referendum. So it's kind of, in all transparency, it's kind of a significant change, but it's more procedural than anything else. So, any questions from the electors or from the board?
Just out of curiosity, how much do you expect to save from refinancing?
They quoted us originally at $13,000 a year, and we still have 12 years left on this building. It depends on if we wait until December to refinance, where we would go in as a tax exempt status and could save more money if the interest rates hold low. If not, we would just go in, I forget what the second type is, but it wouldn't be under that status. We would be saving then that $13,000 a year. It could be potentially higher if we wait till December. So, yep.
And we're going to rely on our advisors, elders, but it may be prudent to wait until we can get the tax exempt status and offer tax-free government bonds to refinance the loan, and then the savings would even be higher. So, but I think it's a substantial savings, over a 12-year period. So, and at these rates, candidly, there's not much interest in paying off the building debt early because the rates are just so favorable. Any other questions from the electors? Any questions from the board? Yes.
Would this solely be for the building debt and not, Howard had mentioned we have the $250,000 for, I wrote that down, for vehicles?
Yeah, we got in at a low interest rate on the other two loans that we had, so I don't think and they're not really worth the process of refinancing for
Okay.
those amounts, but we're talking about a $3 million loan, so
Okay,
it, yeah,
just the
it would
building
be for just the
at this
building.
time. Okay.
Yeah. And we didn't do bonds for the vehicles.
Correct.
We did just,
Just a general
and we
loan.
did it through the state. That's part of the budgeting
That's right.
process,
Okay,
which
that's
the
that one.
electors vote upon in December.
Okay.
This is just bonds for
The building.
major construction projects, buildings, sewer systems, water treatment systems, things along those lines.
Do they have a general timeframe to close if we don't wait till tax exempt status?
Well, the board would have to decide and vote on the actual refunding or the issuance, so I would expect.
We'll have our elders guys come in and do a dog and pony show for
Yeah.
us.
I would expect a couple months at least.
Yeah. But that's at a board meeting, not at the electors meeting. So any other questions, comments? If not, I take a motion from the electors to act upon Resolution 21-647, a resolution to authorize the town board to issue general obligation bonds pursuant to Section 60.10, Sub 2, Sub D of the Wisconsin statute.
I so move.
So you move to approve, and I have a second to approve. I have a motion, I have a motion and a second to approve the adoption of the resolution. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right, thank you. Moving on to department reports, they're all attached. Due to the current COVID environment, we have not asked the department heads to come in. If the fire department is here, if you care to, you may address anything in your report.
I have nothing to report additionally unless there's questions on something that was submitted.
What I would propose to the electors and to the board is that in reviewing these, if the electors have questions that come up, they contact Administrator Green, and we relay those questions to the various department heads, be it engineering, fire, building inspection, or whatever, and we get the answers back to them, and it's same holds true for the town board. Anybody have any specific questions now on any of the departmental reports? Okay, then we'll move along to adjournment and take a motion to adjourn.
I so move we adjourn.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you for coming out. We appreciate your support and your involvement.